Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is the Ruler of Books tag. I was tagged by Grace from the Music Snob, and I'll link her video below, and the tag was originally created by Ariel Bizet, and I will link the original below as well. So we have some questions, and if you were the ruler of the universe, but the only thing you can do is make rules about books, what would you do? That's what our questions are. So let's take a look at the questions. Question number 1, what book would you make everyone read? This one I probably overthought because I kept thinking, well, you don't want to make everybody read your favorite book, especially if it's like in a narrow genre or a narrow topic, because, I like to read a lot of First World War stuff, and not everybody likes that, so if I wouldn't want to force that on everybody. And then I was thinking, you don't want to pick something that's too literary, because then you get people who don't understand it, and I don't mean that in like a super patronizing way. In the sense that, for example, I remember when I was in high school, we read a book, Timothy Finley's The Wars, and in my school we read that in OAC, which means it was the last final year of high school, and at my sister's school they read that in grade 11, which is 2 years earlier, and there were literally people in my sister's class who read that book and thought there was a scene where a character had sex with a horse, which doesn't happen, but they misunderstood the metaphorical language in one of the scenes. And this was a book people studied in school. So I feel like that's why you can't pick something too literary, because, not everybody wants to have to think things through, and you don't want people to get the wrong impression. So after I did all of that overthinking, I thought my pick, which if I were back at home I would be holding this book up, but unfortunately I can't, so I'll try to add a picture afterwards, would be C.S. Friedman's This Alien Shore, which I have lent out 5 times and had stolen 3 times, and it would have been 4, except I was at somebody's house and said, oh, I'm going to take this back now. And the only person who didn't try to steal it did go out and buy it for herself, so I figure it has a fairly broad, it can appeal to a fairly broad number of interest groups. It's technically science fiction, but I have found a lot of people who, as a rule, don't read science fiction will read this book. People who read mysteries but don't read science fiction have enjoyed that. People who read literary fiction and don't read science fiction have enjoyed that. People who read only space operas and would rather read about plot than ideas can read this and enjoy it. People who read hard sci-fi and are more interested in ideas than plot can read this and enjoy it. And I think it has interesting messaging about what makes people human and the mind, and in addition to it has the space travel elements, it has the mystery elements, it has portrayal of my brain and what we think about as insanity and cultural attitudes towards brain differences. Which isn't to say it's a perfect book. I think there's maybe a couple of errors in biology that are in there, but it was written almost 20 years ago, so I think some of and I don't want to spoil too much, so I won't say too much, but there are a couple of things where I think our current attitudes might change the way some of it looks today, but not to an extent that I think ruins what I think the main takeaways are, which is that a lot of people can read this who I think are not normally it lets people read more diversely in terms of genre and subject, and also in sort of the sense that people, when they're doing all their hashtag diversity stuff, it actually says a lot about tribalism amongst humans, and also the way we react to mental illness and disability in general. And it also has some of the better portrayals of hacking, which is not related to anything else, but that's something that a lot of, not just books, but media in general tend to get wrong, and they did an interesting job in that book. Anyway, I would make people read that, because I think a broader variety of people can enjoy that than you might think if you just looked at the cover and thought, who's the target market for this? Not me, but it might be you. So yeah. Question number 2, what would you abolish in book construction? I think the thing that frustrates me the most in book construction is when you get the trade or collected versions of comics that have been published not on the newsprint style paper, but that were published on glossy paper, but then the reprint or the trade is on that flat newsprint. And I feel like out of the Wildstorm books that came out in the late 2000s that were originally printed on glossy paper and had really great colors, I think was it Laura Dupuis who was coloring, say, like the Warren Ellis Brian Hitch run on The Authority when that first started. Like, beautiful colors that pop on the page. And then when they put out the first trade, they put it out on this, junky newsprint style paper, and you just don't get the same punch to the art. So that kind of ruins it. So that would be what I would abolish. Like, you can print it on newsprint if it was originally published on newsprint, but if it was written for glossy pages and colored for glossy pages, you should get glossy pages. And I think the more recent trades of that are on glossy now. And I've sometimes thought, maybe I should buy them. Like, do I need to rebuy that just for the paper quality? The next question is, what author would you commission to write any book? That's tough. Because I always feel like part of the fun of reading even your favorite author is seeing what they do that's new and what they do that's unexpected. And I feel like if you commission them and ask them to write something, then they're going to have to be writing it for you. And it's like, I don't know. Well, I guess the temptation is always to go, to think of like an author who died before they finished something and ask them what would the final copy of this had been like. And there are a whole bunch that you can answer for that. But then at the same time, you're like, well, if I'm raising them from the dead, I should probably let them live their lives and not just say, finish this book for me. That seems kind of... I feel conflicted about that. But yeah, there we go. That's my non-answer for that, I guess. What book would you demote to the library basement to make room for new books? That's tough, because you don't want to move... I suppose if it's in the basement, it hasn't actually been moved out of circulation. I suppose technically, if you just wanted to move in new books, you just rotate out whatever was the least popular of... But that's not an interesting answer. So if I'm going to go for an interesting answer, I would say anytime that you see an author who's on one of those lists of, the 100 best that you need to read before you die or something like that, I would say the one book, and when we're talking about authors who have like a huge body of work, the one book that keeps appearing on those lists, that one put in the basement. People can still get it. They have to go down the rickety elevator or the spiral staircase or whatever. They can still get it if they want it. But if they go to the library and they don't know anything about it other than that top 100 list, and so they're maybe not going to make that effort, and they're sitting there with the list going, I need to read some, I don't know, Solzhenitsyn or something, and the Gulag Archipelago is in the basement, so maybe they're going to read, I don't know, the Cancer Ward or something instead. And so that might be interesting, and have people reading a broader variety of books, even if they have that list of, the 100 greatest or something. I don't know, that might be an interesting experiment. See how that goes. Next question. What cover artist would you commission to make a mural? Without a doubt, Glenn Fabry, who did the covers for Preacher, and during Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer, he did those covers. When I was in university, I used to have a poster on my door of one of his Wolverine covers. Love his stuff. So yeah, that's an easy one. Definitely him. Next question. What character's face would you put on a coin? I don't know. Why would I put a character's face on a coin? Like a collectible coin? I remember a couple months ago I was talking about the new Fitz and the Fool trilogy by Robin Hobb, which has a character that we've followed because there's a trilogy of trilogies about the same characters. So it would be neat, I guess, in the same way that, like, if you look at Canadian currency, the Queen gets older. You can see what year the coins were minted and have Fitz getting older. I don't know. It's kind of a weird question to me. I don't know why you'd want to put somebody on a coin, because it seems so, But anyway, there we go. Okay. And the final question is, what book would you award the Ruler of Books 2016 prize to? To be honest, I haven't read that many new releases this year, so I really only have a few books to choose from the year. But if I was going to choose something a little bit different, I would choose a book that I think was actually published in 2013, but I just bought it and read it this year. And that's Chaz Rost's memoir, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, which is about her final interactions with her parents when they were quite elderly and having health crises. And it was because I read that during the summer my mother was saying, getting herself scheduled to have a hip replacement, and I was going to come for a week. And then I read that book, and I ended up talking to my husband and then calling my mother back and saying, no, I'm going to come for a month and a half, or however long I need to be there to help you out, because reading that book really made me think, we need to look after our parents, and not just in a sort of superficial, I'm going to come for a week and say I did something kind of way. So that really was the book that had the biggest real life impact on me, because that's why I haven't been home in 6 weeks. And yeah, if I hadn't read that, I don't think I would have come and stayed for that long. So that definitely gets the prize, even though it wasn't published this year, from my personal perspective. Yeah. Anyway, this was a fun tag. I don't do a lot of tags. It's always tricky, because I know this tag's been going on for a while, and I haven't done a huge amount of research to see who's done it or not. So what I'm going to do is say, if you've started a new channel within the past 3 months, and you haven't had a chance to do this tag yet, do this tag, you're tagged. And comment below if you did it, and so we can check it out. And that's it. That's the Ruler of Books tag. Thanks again to Grace for tagging me, and ciao!